Go. Good morning, everybody. We're here. We're just going to give a moment. I can see all the participants filing in. Just give them all a moment to get in here. Appreciate everybody joining us. Okay. Here we go. Starting to level out there. I think we've got most of our folks in. So good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is Benjamin Neely. I'm the Executive Director of the Berks History Center, and it is my pleasure to join you here this morning for our second Saturday program of December. And I just have a couple of announcements. First thing I'd like to do is once again thank Herbine Company for allowing us to borrow their Zoom platform for hosting webinars. That has been a tremendous help for us this year as we navigate, operating in the pandemic. And we're just very grateful for that kind of support. And they've just really been there for us, both with this and with our Road Ramble program that we held this October. So we're just really grateful to Herbine. Right now, I know most of you are probably aware, with the recent orders and mandates put in to mitigate the spread of COVID, that is forced us to close our doors again here for a little bit. So we're still going to, as much as possible, have staff members on site and be there to answer the phone and to answer emails. We definitely want to talk to you. We love it when we can be open and have you there, and it's just not possible right now, but it's temporary, and we'll just weather this together. But we appreciate you sticking with us, showing up to these programs. That means the world to us. So thank you very much for that. Our staff is going to take a little break between Christmas and New Year's, but generally 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Wednesday through Saturday. We're going to try and maintain an on-site presence there at the History Center. So please do call us. Go to our website. You'll see our email addresses there, but the phone number's 610-375-4375. And we'll be back to gathering together, hopefully sometime in the next year here. But appreciate you sticking with us. One thing I want to say as we're heading into the holiday season is that membership makes a great gift. If you're having trouble figuring out what you're going to buy for somebody who's a history buff, think about a membership with the Berks History Center. One of the best membership benefit here is they'll start to receive a copy of the historical review of Berks County, which in my camera looks like it's printed backwards, but we print it forwards. It's one of the things we're most proud of about the magazine. It is actually a tremendous magazine. If you get it, you know that. We'd love to have you as a member. So, give us a call at 610-375-4375. There's Rick's. We'd love to, have new members. That really helps us out, and it really does make a great gift. So please reach out with that. We'd love to have you. Our next second Saturday program is on for January 9th. And we're going to have Paul Dresba joining us again, doing Never Sink, Redding's Other Mountain. Paul actually was the first one I did one of these webinars with. So he was, that was great. Really appreciate Paul doing this, and I'm looking forward to doing another program with him here. So I hope you can come back and join us in January for that program. We're excited for it. With our program today, we have Rick Politica with us. Rick's one of our trustees, dedicated volunteer. He does so much for us. We really appreciate having Rick around. He does everything. He's doing this program, and later today he's going down to the History Center to purge the boiler for us. So Rick really does it all. And we're just so grateful for that, Rick. And we'll get. I'll turn this over to you for a second. He's going to be doing Christmas on Penn Street, which is just a great piece of nostalgia. And I think you're all really going to enjoy this program. I'll be having the same audience experience as you do. So if we do have a snafu, the internet speed gets slow somewhere, and Rick's audio starts to get a little garbled or the screen freezes, it's going to be doing that for me too. And I'll try to communicate that first to Rick through a chat box. But it's very common for the presenter sort of be kind of caught up in what they're doing in the program and not looking for a chat from me. And so I'll give that a second. And then if it's not, I'll cut in on the audio and just say, hey, Rick, we're having a little bit of trouble, and we'll try to reset. But we've actually been speaking together through the Zoom for about a half hour or so here and testing the program, and it's gone really smooth. So hopefully that continues. There's a Q&A box as we're going along. Feel free to put your questions in there or share memories or whatever. We'll be looking at that at the end of the program, and Rick and I will go through that and answer your questions, and we'll look forward to communicating with you that way. But with that, I'm going to turn my camera off and turn the floor over to Rick Politek. And Rick, you can just imagine uproarious applause from everybody. They rose to their feet to welcome you to the stage. Thanks a lot, Rick.
Thanks a lot, Ben. I appreciate that. This is the first time I'm actually talking to a computer and actually seeing 57 participants out there. So that's actually, this is going to be a new experience for me. So as I get into this, I'll get comfortable and I should be just fine. And I'm just going to pretend that you're all sitting there in front of me, and we'll just have some fun with it that way. I developed this program about a year ago because I thought that this would be something that would be really nice to share around Christmas time. If we could share some of our Christmas memories from Penn Street past, primarily Penn Street past. There's some other photographs in here that may not have something to do with Penn Street, but for the most part, what we're looking at is downtown Reading. This program, obviously, again, when we watch this, one thing that when I did this last year at the Berks History Center, when we opened it up and when I did it subsequently to satellite sites during December last year, there was a little video that I incorporated into it that was from my family home videos of the parade on Penn Street in 1958. Unfortunately, with the advent of media which we're doing this in today, that won't play too well today, so I can't keep that in part of this program. But that's a nice little clip of color photographs showing the steam coming from the grates on Penn Street as the Central Catholic Marching Band was going by. And you can see just how Penn Street looked at the time during a Christmas parade. But let's, and then again, also one other thing I would like to at least say is I'm always looking to improve this program. So if any of the viewers out there have any kind of photographs that they would be willing to want to help share with and to make this program even nicer of memories on Penn Street or pictures of Penn Street at Christmas time, please contact us at 375-4375 or contact Elise at the Berks History Center at Elise, E-L-I-S-E, at berkshistory.org, and she will be more than happy to forward those photographs to me. So with that being said, we're going to take a look at our first photograph here, and we're going to go back to 1938, because what we normally think about with Christmas and Penn Street is we think about the traditional tree lighting, the traditional Christmas parade, which is the Saturday before Thanksgiving. But things before the parade, when the parade first started, which was not until 1953, the parade that we know today, that didn't start until 1953. But before that, there was a completely different tradition. And basically, the day after Thanksgiving was the first day of the Christmas season. And with that being said, the first slide that we're looking at is Shop in Reading on Santa Claus Lane. This is from 1938. This was a Reading Eagle ad from 1938. And what this ad is showing us is folks will come from many miles to shop in Reading this year. And the big advertisement about this was the night that they turned on all the Christmas decorations downtown. They were all strung up, ready to go, but they did not have them turned on. And what this is showing us is that they would have the tree lighting ceremony that night where they would light the Christmas tree. They would light all the decorations on Penn Square. And the other thing that was a healthy competition amongst the merchants downtown was they all had their storefront windows draped, and they would all unveil their Christmas displays for the holiday season. And there was always a healthy competition of who had the nicest Christmas display. But this was the day after. This is what you would think of today as Black Friday, but this was 7:30 at night, they unveiled the lights. So that must have been a completely different thing to experience as far as the beginning of the Christmas season back in 1938. And that Santa Claus Lane, you're going to see that periodically throughout this program, because if you see on the picture here, all these little triangles, you're going to see what they actually look like in real photography, not just drawings, because that was the theme of Penn Street back at that era at time as Santa Claus Lane. The next photograph we have, this is what a five and dime would have looked like back in 1902. This is courtesy of George Miser from the Passing Scene, George and Gloria. I thank them for allowing me to use these photographs. This is downtown Reading, 500 blocks outside of Penn Street, F.W. Woolworths. And if you look at this sign, you see on the one aisle to the right-hand side, everything was 5 cents. And everything to the left was in the center was 10 cents. That's your 5 and your dime. And the thing that's interesting about F.W. Woolworth is we did a little research, Michelle Lynch and I, and we came up with finding out that F.W. Woolworth was responsible for the balls that you hang on your Christmas tree today, the shiny brights, most likely. They originated through he was the first one to introduce glass ornaments. Originally, they were made in Europe in the beginning, but then he wound up, when World War I broke out, he wound up finding U.S. manufacturers that were willing to make glass ornaments. And that is what pretty much what's on your trees today has a little bit of F.W. Woolworth in it as far as the originator and that stuff. So this is a very nice picture. It shows just how well stocked a 5 and dime would have been back at that time. Next photograph we have, this is from 1910. And this, if we look at this closely, we see the pagoda is brand spanking new up here in the top. We see the trees lined all along the trolley route going down Penn Street. And the other thing that's very interesting in this photograph is all the wagons that are on the side here that are selling Christmas trees. You can see all the Christmas trees being sold on the street. I like this photograph a lot because it kind of made the trolley line like a royal archway of Christmas trees going up through the square. This is like 1910 downtown Reading. Our next photograph shows an ad for Kroll and Keck. Now, a lot of people, when they remember when Kroll and Keck was downtown, they remember that Kroll and Keck was in the 600 block of Penn Street next to Pomeroy's. However, this ad shows it from 418 420, and that building today downtown would be what you would know as the Rite Aid downtown. But this building also had some history that went back to the 1870s. There was a builder of that gentleman that built most of the homes in the northwest section of Reading, as his name was John R. Bechtel, and this was where his clothier store was with his sons. This is Kroll and Keck, and this ad is from around 1917 is what this is, around the World War I era time. This store I kind of like. This is Leinbach and Brothers, 753 Penn Street. This is around 1910, and this is what a clothier would have looked like on the interior. It's like we get to see the pictures of the exterior of the buildings, but you don't always get a chance to see what they kind of look like on the inside, and this gives you a very, very good indication of what it looked like. We see the stairway that went up to the second floor. We see the little balcony at the very top. And we also see piles in the aisles, basically. This photograph is from the interior of C.K. Whitner, and as you can see in the description, it's actually, I believe, from a postcard. And the thing that Whitner's had a fire, and that was in 1911, and then the store was reconfigured. But this is prior to the fire. And the thing that was interesting about C.K. Whitner's was this was called the Store of Light, because you can see the glass atriums at the very top that gave illuminated light into the center of the store. This is a very unique, very rare kind of picture of what the inside of C.K. Whitner looked like back at that time. Next photograph. This is one of my personal favorites. I have two of these in a row. One shows the back view and one shows the close-up. So I did the close-up view first. And this is Dives, Pomeroy's and Stewart. This is from 1920. So this is 3 years before George Pomeroy bought out the interests of Dives and Stewart to make it just known as Pomeroy's, as most of us all know. But as we see this, we see these fantail windows down here. This was how the store appeared when it was lit up. And I kind of believe that there might have been something else in here as opposed to just displays. I believe this might have been like where the tea room might have been. I'm not sure that 100%, but you can see all the Christmas trees along the building. They went to some extensive effort to decorate the store for Christmas, because you see the large star on the Penn Street side, and that is the original building from I believe that was from 1882, the building that they're in there. They came downtown here in 1876, and they opened in the 500 block of Penn Street at 533, and then they moved down next to Whitner's, and I'll show you that when we see a picture of Whitner's a little later on. I'll show you which building they actually occupied. But when they occupied the building on the 400 block of Penn Street, they actually, one of their advertisements was, "We have a working telephone in our store. Come in and see it operate." So that was kind of something very interesting. But when you look at this, you see the star on the Penn Street side. That is the original 1882 building that they had occupied. That was the original store. The second building that they had built was the corner store here. That was considered the Heisman building because they leased that property from the Heismans in 1900 for 99 years. And then the second portion of the addition was built in 1918. That was this back portion here. And then this third portion, they eliminate the original building and they put the third part in. I believe 1921 was when the third piece was put in. And you'll get to see a second picture a little bit further back. And one thing that Reading used to call Penn Street when it was all lit up, as you see from the bottom here all the way up, they called it the Great White Way. So that is what you might hear me refer to it as the Great White Way a couple of times, and that is what Penn Street was known of at that time. So like I said, this is 1920. The building that was down here, this was actually at one point the Reading Eagle, but I think around this time, this became the Far Shoe Store building before they moved down to the corner of 5th and Penn on the 400 block. But this is like one of my personal favorite pictures. I really enjoy this one a lot. The next photograph, we see some ads for Christmas. This is from Whitman Jewelry Company, 842 Penn Street. And this was right after the stock market crash. And they were encouraging liberal credit to all. So they buy it now and worry about paying about it later. I will say that Whitman's did exist through the Depression. They did survive through the Depression. I believe they lasted into the early 1950s. So they did make it through the dark days of the Great Depression of the 1930s. But this is, this gives you, I always like older ads for downtown Reading because it kind of gives you an idea just what things cost around that time. And you're going to see a couple of ads going through this program. So enjoy them because you get to see how much rings would cost as opposed to some other watches and other things. So it's, the watches that would cost. Actually, here's this one watch here for $125. That must have been, I wonder how much that would cost in today's dollars, from 1929, I'm sorry. So, and this is the fashion. This was actually at the 500 Fifth and Penn Streets in the 400 block. This was at Penn Square, Fifth and Penn, right at the corner. And as you see, the dial is 48411. I was half tempted when I gave the Historical Society or Berks History Center's phone number of 610-375-4375. I was tempted to say Franklin 54375, but well, I did now, so I did it. But you can see how much some things cost at that time. And this is, I believe, from 1931 is what this era advertisement is for Santa Claus at the fashion. This photograph was the cover of our historic review in 1997. This is a painting of James L. Holton. And this was actually commissioned as the Four Seasons paintings that he did for Penn Savings Bank in 1980. And this kind of gives you a picture of what Penn Street looked like in the 1930s with the Pomeroy's building all lit up and shoppers bustling around on the snowy sidewalk with Santa Claus, waiting to greet people as they walked along. I always liked this. When this cover came out in 1997, I think I had it out on my display for like probably about the whole Christmas season because it just looked so Christmassy. It has been one of my favorites. Of course, no holiday is not complete without Old Reading beer. You're going to see a couple of beer ads going through here, whether on pictures of buildings with the ads or just ads like such. But that's old Gus saying, "Happy holiday, Old Reading beer." This is the Whitner store. Now, when I was saying about Pomeroy's occupying, Pomeroy's occupied this building here. This was the building where they were in originally. Then Whitner's took it over as time went on. But this was the original C.K. Whitner building. And this building is 1939. If you look at this bus here that's in the picture, I have a lot of photographs. You're always going to see a bus parked here. And apparently this was where the route from Reading to Allentown, where they picked you up and they took you to Allentown and transported you back. But if you notice also here, you see Sears decked out right next to Whitner's. So that was actually, Sears existed on the square until the late 1950s, early 60s, I believe it was, until they moved out onto Lancaster Avenue. And then subsequently over to the Berkshire Mall. But that building you would have known probably in the later part of Penn Square as the Schaefer Furniture Building is what you would probably have known that as. And then next door to that was the Kinney Shoe Store. But this is 1939. And if you look closely here, these are the Santa Claus Lane. You're going to get a little closer up picture of this, but that's the Santa Claus Lane picture that you saw on the drawing in the very beginning. And this is kind of the healthy competition that would have been exhibited by the merchants downtown. This is a typical Christmas display in the window that would have probably been unveiled around in the beginning back of that older tradition. And this is the C.K. Whitner display that was in the front of their window. I do believe we have this plaque here in our display, in our collection at the Berks History Center, because we have a plaque extremely similar to that. And this is the further down on the block. This is Joseph's and Tertia House. They operated side by side for many years up into the late 80s, early 90s. And these are the Santa Claus Lane photograph pictures again. So you can tell this is from that 1938-39 era of time. I believe these are 1939 actually. This is a Christmas ad from Ellis Mills. Ellis Mills was a store that was next to the Lowe's Theater up on the 600 block at Penn Street. And like I said, a lot of ads were populated throughout the newspapers with different ads as to what, Ellis Mills was billing themselves as the Christmas store. So there was only one place you need to go for those kind of gifts that you wanted to get. Everything under one bill, one proof. So. And we're talking about the Lowe's Colonial. We're talking about probably the biggest thing that went on at the Lowe's Colonial over the years was the showing of Gone with the Wind, 1939. We did this, we were one of few cities that hosted this movie in 1939. The others were Atlanta, New York, Los Angeles, Houston, Boston, Washington, D.C., Cincinnati, and Reading, Pennsylvania. Most everyone else offered this movie in 1940, but the motion picture industry wanted to get this released in 1939 so they could qualify for the 1939 Oscar Awards. This is an ad that was showing advertisement that you can buy your seats. The movie, as we can see in the next photograph, showed that the merchants downtown like to get into the theme also as well. They would have various different Gone with the Wind ads, whether you can get chocolates or you can go see some of the gowns from Gone with the Wind at the Jeanette shop, or you can get prints at W.T. Grant, or my personal favorite is just step on the gas and you're Gone with the Wind in a 1940 Oldsmobile. I always thought that was a kind of an interesting and fun, humorous advertisement for that. Upon doing some research, primarily of my parents' hometown, I noticed that there was a lot of cities when this movie premiered in their town that merchants did the exact same thing, where they had a page full of ads of merchants having Gone with the Wind themed ads for this historically successful picture, probably still the most successful picture in the motion picture industry. So, history. But 1939 continued on, and the other movie theaters had their openings too. This is the Astor Theater from 1939, what it kind of appeared. And the interesting thing that we don't realize with the motion picture industry was these theaters were all affiliated with the studios that put pictures out when it was in the studio system. So they would crank out pictures with stock players that actually Warner Brothers had their stock players, MGM had their stock players. So when a movie premiered, no matter how successful it was, it usually only premiered for about, on Penn Street, it would premiere for about maybe 4 or 5 days, and then it would be taken out and a new movie would be brought in, and then it would move to one of the neighborhood theaters as one of the secondary venues. And if it was really popular, it may come back to Penn Street for a second time. But for the most part, like I said, the Astor Theater was in the 1930s. That was a Warner theater. So you'll see a lot of Warner Brother movies being played at the Astor Theater until they got their own theater at the Warner, which was the old State in 1941. We'll see that a little later on in this program also as well. And you can see the Santa Claus Lane, once again, right here. You can see those decorations on the lampposts going up the street. Kaufman's Furniture Store. Kaufman's Furniture Store was in the 700 block of Penn Street as well. Kaufman's Furniture Store was popular for they would host Santa Claus on WRAW radio, and he'd have his own program. And actually, in a historic review from 2005, there was a gentleman that sent a letter in. His name was David Voigt, and at the age of 7 in 1933, the program got preempted a couple of times by Lowell Thomas on the radio, and he actually wrote a letter to Lowell Thomas with a canceled stamp, and it actually got through to Lowell Thomas, and saying, please get off the radio, I want to listen to Santa Claus. So it turned out that it was very ironic that it actually got through. Lowell Thomas actually read the article, the letter, and he listened to it, and they wound up moving their radio program to a different time so they wouldn't preempt Santa Claus in Reading, Pennsylvania. And later on, Lowell Thomas actually had he was speaking at Albright College, and he actually invited David O. Voigt to come see him and he commended him for believing, showing that there was importance with Santa Claus as opposed to what was going on in the world. That was actually a kind of a nice story. But here in the next photograph, we're going to see Santa Claus coming into the Pennsylvania Railroad Station underneath the Penn Street Bridge. And as you can see, he had a float. He had a lot of people there to see him. And it was actually a very big affair when Santa Claus made his way in. He was taken up to his throne up in the 700 block of Penn Street. But as we all know, there was quite a few Santa Clauses around town because Pomeroy's always had their Santa Claus, and I'm sure there was more than one. But this one, he made his way up to Penn Street. 753 Penn Street, Kaufman's Furniture. Here you can really see the Santa Claus Lane. We're right next door to Kaufman's, and this is, we can see the Crystal Palace here. And then we can see the Brait's Christmas Annex next door, and then Kaufman's is right here. You see all the Christmas trees on the Kaufman's building and from the prior photograph. And then right next door here, you're going to be looking at the Astor Theater here. And then Harold's Furniture, you see the building here. But here's probably a really good photograph of that Santa Claus Lane themed sign that you saw on Penn Street. And again, this is 1939. This again is from The Passing Scene, courtesy George Miser and Gloria Miser. And this is 6th and Penn Streets. And we're looking kind of like from where Kresge's would be. And we're looking at the Salvation Army. And we can see a child dropping some coins in, this is the 1930s. And of course, we see the Sunshine Beer sign at the top and a Pomeroy sign right next door. This is down in the 300 block of Penn Street. And we see on the left-hand side, Castle Foods. Castle Foods had 42 stores throughout Reading and Berks. And in the 1930s, had most of those stores were neighborhood corner stores. Castle Foods was rather large. And on the right-hand side here, as you're looking up through the Christmas trees, we can see the marquee of the Capitol Theater right here. And that was what the Grand Opera House was. But by the 1930s and 1940s, that was the Capitol Theater. And you would probably know most of this building where the Reading Eagle building would occupy the site today. And you can see the brick in the middle of the trolley tracks on the street. Here we are in the 700 block of Penn. We're looking at the A.S. Beck shoe store and the People's Drug. If you remember, the People's Drugs had Gone with the Wind prints that they were offering for sale. But the A.S. Beck shoe store, was probably one of the more historically significant buildings that was downtown. It had a little bit of Gothic revival, but not a lot of it. They had a little Romanesque in it with the arches, as well as the oriel window and the lancet arches in the windows up here. Very, very historically significant building. Unfortunately, that made way when the redevelopment of the 700 and 600 blocks took place in the early 1970s. And we're on Santa Claus Lane, so obviously 39 seems to be where a lot of these photographs have come from. And we're just fortunate at the Berks History Center that we have these to be able to show you guys. Again, Santa Claus Lane, 39, and we're looking at the Mohican store. And that was at 720 Penn Street, a little bit further up. The Mohican was a meat market, and the one thing I remember from one of my patrons at one of my other programs I did last year told me that the Mohican store, the floor was covered with sawdust. That was kind of something that you would not see in today's world. This is 1940. This is a personal favorite of mine. This is Penn Street. Again, this really shows when they talked about Penn Street being the Great White Way. This shows it. This shows it a lot. And here again, we see buses again here parked right in front of Whitner's. Once again, and the lights that you see here, that you're seeing here, that is headlights, and that's from the slow exposure of the headlights of the cars as they went by. You don't see too many cars on the street because it did not pick up on some of them, but there's a lot of ghosts in this picture that you can't really see too well because the lights had to originate from somewhere. But you can't really pick up the cars, but you can see the lights. And it's actually a very neat picture. And again, you see Pomeroy's with all the Christmas trees up on the building, and you see how it's all well lit up. And you see our Sunshine Beer sign. It's this sign actually changed. You're going to see in the coming up picture that I have, it had two different names in that, where it flashed different sayings at the top. But this is 1940. And the next photograph is going to show you a little bit more closer up photograph. And the reason why I did this close up is for two reasons. Is the couple of Christmas trees that we're going to focus on. And number one was the main area where the Christmas tree was put in the 1940s before the trolley cars still occupied the main stretch. The main Christmas tree was put in the 500 block on the north side in the middle. And that is what I'm pointing to here. That is the main Christmas tree downtown that was lit every year. And the other thing that's neat to take a look, then you get to see all the Christmas trees that are on the Pomeroy building. But the other thing that's really neat in this photograph to take a look at is you can see the Christmas tree in the hollowed out section of the pagoda with the star at the top, right up here. This is an ad from 1943. This is from the Reading Newsweek, giving a Merry Christmas to the soldiers overseas. Reading was one of the few communities in the United States that actually print their own newspaper to send specifically to servicemen that were serving overseas during World War II. And this is a Christmas ad that was promoted to be safe over there and to get home soon. That Christmas tree in the 500 block of Penn Street during World War II was well decked out in patriotic American flags to show our patriotism, but I think a big gust of wind took it out one day, and this is kind of what it looked like after it fell down. We had a little bit of a problem that day. But they did get it back up and running, and you can kind of tell where this was at. This is kind of like where Russo's Pizza is today. It's kind of in front of that building, so that's right where it was put up on the 500 block of Penn Street. Again, Merry Christmas. This was another Merry Christmas that was in one of the Reading Newsweek newspapers that was sent to the soldiers overseas. We're going color now. And this is the Lowe's Colonial Theater. This is 1945. And you can just see how well lit up that neon looked with the Lowe's Colonial Theater. The Lowe's Colonial Theater operated from around 1917 up until 1969, 1970. And it was one of the many buildings that was claimed in that redevelopment of the blocks when they were looking to put the proposed Penn Mall in the 600 and 700 blocks of Penn Street. I told you there's going to be more Reading beer signs. Here's an old Reading beer sign. You're going to see a couple of different versions of this in succession here because it flashed different signs, different messages as we looked on. This is over top of what would be today the Marvel Ranch at 4th and Penn Streets. Keep smiling, old Reading beer. And then we see that a little bit more up close. And also we see traditionally Pennsylvania Dutch. So it did flash a couple of different signs. And here it's actually getting into the spot where it's going to start transitioning over to old Reading beer again, because the old is lit up. Traditionally Pennsylvania Dutch is lit up. And you get to see kind of what was going on. You see the BJ Saylor building on the far right-hand section of the picture here. And then you actually see where the Marble Ranch is today. That was the Penn Service soda fountain. But you can see all the color that was on the street. It was very, very colorful to be downtown Reading at Christmas time. It's nice that we had these photographs. We had just, gotten these photographs into our collection recently. And it's nice to show just, the black and whites are nice, but they don't get to show just how much color was downtown at that time. And there was quite a bit of color. I told you there was going to be beer signs, and of course, Sunshine had to get into it also. Season's greetings from Sunshine. My father worked at Sunshine Beer, so I'm a little biased, and I had to put that in for my father's sake. Now here we're looking at where this is at 5th and Penn. You would known this probably for many years where the McDonald's was at 5th and Penn Streets. This was the building that replaced the Mansion House. And then underneath this building was the Mansion Bowling Center in the basement. But this is at the 5th and Penn on the 500 block. This would be 500 Penn Street, I guess it would be at this point. And this was, I believe, where the Jeanette shop was also at that point. But the sign we're looking at up here is for Burke's Franks and Hostess Hams. And this is 6th and Penn Streets. These photographs are from 1946 also, just so you know. And this is showing the A&B smoked hams and a Canada Dry with the Sunshine beer. If you look at it here, it says it's extra pale, and it also says it's extra dry. So the pale and the dry kind of look like they flip-flopped over there. It's extra something always stayed up, but pale and dry was the two signatures of Sunshine beer. But again, you kind of see it's like half in transition there. It's going from one sign to the other up there. This is Penn Square at night. You see all the color, you see Lobel's, you see Bauer's photographs. And you're kind of looking at that 500 block of Penn Street with Pomeroy's in the end. You can't really see any buildings. All you're seeing is the decorations. And this is Pomeroy's building. This is 1946. This is what they put on the display of the store. The one thing I'm noticing about this is it looked like this was the first step towards, they must have retransitioned the store, because in subsequent photographs going forward, you're going to see all these windows up on the mezzanine section, all kind of covered up from the inside out. The windows were still there, but they were kind of covered up, because it looked like they had moved what was in that area out. That's why I kind of think it was more like where the tea room was, and they moved it back further into the building. And they used this for actually displaying merchandise on the second floor. And then subsequently, when they made the modernization of the building, that they covered this entirely up, and that kind of completed the transformation. I did actually see with the when they modernized it, there was a proposal for it where they really had a big white swath that went around the entire building all the way down to Cherry Street on the 6th Street side. That didn't happen. They did a smaller version of that, but by 1961, that was changed. This is from our collection. This is a Pomeroy's Toyland button that you would have gotten with a picture of Santa Claus. And we have this in our collection currently on display in our 150th anniversary display in the Palmer Gallery. This picture is from No Introduction Necessary, December 7th, 1947. This photograph is courtesy of Mary Lynn Pottinger Rathman. I met her at a program I was doing last year, and she brought in a whole bunch of pictures of her in with Santa Claus. And I'm not really sure which one she is in this, but this was the best of all of them that she gave, so I decided that I was going to use this one. I kind of get the picture the feeling that mom in the background there was a little annoyed at the fact that she was actually in this picture. How dare you take my picture? But there was very little she could do about that at the time. We'll see some more pictures of children with Santa Claus coming up. Here we are at the Astor Theater. And I believe this is 1950 we're looking at now. So you can see that the marquee on this was, I guess, the second marquee of the three that existed on the Astor Theater, because the last one was more rounded in the very end. But this one actually was more like in a triangle form. And this was from Christmas 1950. And you can see the Central Palace Market next door also as well. We saw that from a previous photograph. Here's the Lowe's again. And I believe this is 1950 as well. Christmas time. And you can see how they really promoted their movies at the time, how they put signage up and with the actors' pictures at the top, Red Skeletons in this one. And this was at the railroad tracks, as you can see on the right of the photograph. You can see the railroad crossing guards that went down and up. We've moved up to the 1000 block of Penn Street. You can see the park in the background here, if you look back here. And this is the marquee of the Park Theater. And this is Glasser's department store that we're looking at. And we're going to see in our next photograph, we are going to see a second photograph of Glasser's looking down Penn Street into the 900 block. And if you notice in the second one, the lunch counter is still there, which was, you know it today as the Boston Restaurant. Boston Restaurant had been around for quite a number of years. This gets to give you a good indication of just how people were on Penn Street in the 1950s. I believe this is from 1950, if I'm not mistaken. Taken from the second floor of Pomeroy's. When everything you wanted on the street for your Christmas shopping was on Penn Street. And you can see the Kresge building in view. We actually have part of the old marquee from Kresge downtown in our Trades to Industry book section of the museum. And the one thing that was nice about Kresge's in 1950 is it was an era when all five and dimes had a sales girl at every counter. So you went in to go look for something, there was someone there ready and willing to help you at a moment's notice. But when you hear this, I think of the song Silver Bells, There's Christmas Time in the City. I get that picture of this kind of look when I hear that song. And this is Whitner's, decked out for its 75th anniversary. This is 1952. This was what was the original Pomeroy building back in what I was talking about earlier, where they advertised that they had a working telephone. But as you can see, the store had been changed a little bit more. At least that portion of it had been changed more in the Art Deco style. But that was the 75th anniversary of Whitner's. This is a view from inside the post office on North 5th Street. And you can see how busy it was. People mailing their Christmas letters or getting their Christmas packages. Quite an active place. If you've ever been in there, it is actually truly a sign of the times of how it definitely got that Art Deco style to it inside the building. From the islands where you can actually write your letters out and the little lamps that are on it also as well. And that is from 1953. This is Bamford Circle with this tree in the center. So that's telling you, number one, is the trolley tracks have been removed. And now the circle is, the traffic circle is in the center of the square. And we're looking west in this photograph. You're looking towards the old Reading sign on the right-hand side and the Far Shoe Store building on the left, and Whitner's, of course. And this is a picture looking in the opposite direction, looking at Bamford Circle, looking up towards Pomeroy's. You see again the slow exposure of the lights in this photograph. So there's a lot more cars on the street. I always found it interesting that when they took the trolley tracks out and they brought buses back in, they still made the poor patrons stand out in the middle of the street where the trolleys used to go to be able to pick up and be dropped off at the bus. So you got picked up and dropped off in kind of like almost no man's land, because as much as the picture doesn't really show it, there's a lot more vehicles on that street than you realize. It's just because of the slow exposure. The only reason why this gentleman is, you can see this photograph of the car in front of you, because he stopped, because the rest of them were all moving. But Bamford Circle was put in 1953, I believe. And Bamford Circle was named after James Bamford, who was the mayor of Reading, and it was under his administration as that this was put in. Again, you look at the picture of Pomeroy's, you can see all those windows in the second floor kind of like covered up, that you can't really see in them anymore. So they don't illuminate the light that they used to. Actually, this photograph's from 1954, according to my notes. Here is the bus heading to Melmont, and you can see a snowy scene, and you can see the Christmas decorations on the. But you can see, actually, as much as I believe the trolleys had already ceased to exist, the trolley tracks still did exist. Although actually the trolley car is still in the back. So this is actually before 1952. I jumped backwards a little bit because I can see the trolley car in the back. But you do see the buses here. So you can either take bus or you can take the trolley. This is looking down the Penn Street, down towards 4th and Penn, WEEU. It's showing WEEU also at TV 33. They operated an NBC affiliate UHF television station there between 1953 and 1955. And at the Berks History Center, if you go into our trades industry room, you will see old Sunshine beer commercials, and I believe they were done through the UHF station. So that gives you an era at the time of when they were done. They came from my family collection, actually. So, but they only operated from 1953 to 1955. You'll see a subsequent picture of WEU, and that TV 33 is removed. This is actually the first Christmas parade. This was the balloon parade, 1953. This isn't Penn Street. This is actually North 9th Street. You can tell that from all the garland that is going across the street. The first parade was 1953. That is of the format of what you know today, that we did not have it, unfortunately, due to the pandemic and the fact that I'm talking to a computer right now. We did not have a parade this year, but since 1953, that is the traditional, that traditional parade. So the very first one was a balloon parade. The very first parade that was done in Reading for Christmas was done by the JCs through St. Paul's Church. They did that in 1950. They were unique in one standard, that they wanted to make it a non-commercialized Christmas parade. Basically, they wanted to put Christ back into Christmas, and they did not invite Santa Claus to this parade. The story gained national attention, but it picked up national press, and praise poured in throughout the country and Canada for putting Christ back into Christmas. So it actually drew recognition from the country, but it drew it on a positive note, not a negative note, like Philadelphia Eagle fans throwing snowballs at Santa Claus or booing him. So this is the aftermath of the balloon parade. This is at 5th and Penn, as you can see. And you can see Grant's store in the background, and you can see that 500 Jeanette's shop. You can see it at the corner. Just all the people milling around on the streets. This is Santa from that first parade also. November 21st, 1953. That was when the first parade was downtown Reading. And again, we see the bustling shoppers on Penn Street. Quite a crowd, as you can see. I've always noticed in a lot of photographs I see of Penn Street with pedestrians on the sidewalks that the south side seemed to be more populated with people than the north side. Most pictures, I always noticed that. And I could tell during the course of the day, I could tell that would be the case because of the sun, but that seemed to be always the case. Again, we got another 1953 Christmas at night. And we're looking towards Whitner's and Sears. Joseph's you see down below. Down here you see Joseph's and the Far Shoe Store building here. This was the cover of our historic review a few years ago. This is the magazine for Christmas 1956 from Pomeroy's. Phone number 5-6111. And we have a couple of photographs in this showing what was inside that you can buy for toys. You can see how much some of this stuff cost also. Electronic cannon steel truck with battery operated cannon, $12.95. Some photographs in color of what you can get at Toyland on the 6th floor at Pomeroy's. Silver bells, it's Christmas time in the city. That gives you a good indication just how many people were on that sidewalk. And again, like I said, you can see how the storefront is kind of covered up there. I swear, if you look at this photograph from one to the next, it's not true, but it looks like one year I caught the guy here on the left-hand side walking down the street, and I caught him on the back side the following year with packages in his hand. So I don't know. Could be a irony, or maybe, I don't know. Maybe it is the same guy. Who knows? This is taken from the 800 block, looking down to the 7. You see now the Warner Theater, you see the Embassy Theater, Lowe's Theater, Astor Theater. You see all that. Jazz Lowe's. Chargold Sports Center. Here is the float from 1959. This is Santa Claus in the parade. So we're going a little bit further in time here. You can see all the people in the background, just how close they were up to everything. They were right there. This is 1960. And this is Bamford Circle. You can see now by 1960 in the background that the modernization of Pomeroy's had been complete. This is Mayor John Kubacki and his son Jay, ready to light the Christmas tree in 1960. John Kubacki was the mayor during the Abe Binker era. that Reading was notorious for. Again, we got Christmas, 1960 with Santa Claus. Here we got people going into Pomeroy's December 1961. If those of you who remember entering at this entrance at Pomeroy's, you always knew once you walked in the door, you got blasted by the warm air from the vent. I always remember that. You knew you were in Pomeroy's when you got that warm blast of warm air, especially if it was cold outside. It really felt nice. Here we have Christmas decorations being put up. This is in the 700 block, because you can see now the Lowe's Colonial is just the Colonial down below here. And here is Bamford Circle, 1964 at nighttime. Actually, one thing I did notice around this era of time, as you are well aware, a year before, when President Kennedy was assassinated, the city was looking to memorialize President Kennedy in some way or form. They didn't really come to any conclusions at that time, but one of their suggestions was to putting a memorial for President Kennedy in the middle of Bamford Circle. But they scratched that because they believed that it would be too difficult for people to go up and actually see it in the middle of all the traffic on Penn Street. So that was scrapped. The other idea that they had was naming the West Shore bypass the Kennedy Expressway, but that got scrapped also as well. Again, we see people rushing in and out, going to Pomeroy's, crossing the street, coming with their shopping bags, as the shoppers rush home with their treasures, as the story would say. When I was talking about that modernization of the store, they were actually talking about having that wrap all the way down the street, as you can see up here, going all the way down the line. I do believe I did this program last year, and the thing that was nice about this, doing this program at Keystone Villa in Douglasville, is this gentleman was in attendance, and that was kind of nice. So that was kind of neat. We gave him VIP seating for that show that last year at Keystone Villa. This is showing the traffic circle at night with some snow on the ground. 1964. This is the Reading Marching Band, 1966. This is a really neat picture coming down the 900 block of Penn Street. Here's Santa Claus, obviously doing what he does best, 1964. This Santa Claus got in a little bit of a problem that year because he was getting hit for a parking violation, and he was trying to say, "Do you know who I am?" It's like, buddy, do you know how many times I have heard that line used this year so far? You're going to get your ticket. Here's another Kroll and Keck advertisement. This is when they are on 622 Penn Street. And obviously the Kroll and Keck gifts were better than anybody else's, according to this ad. We're looking at a similar view. We're looking at that same look at WEEU. You see the TV 33 sign has been removed. We see a new sign up there at the top, Reach for Reading. A little different than the Reading beer sign. And we see what was the American House Hotel, now turned into Shirelli Brothers. And a lot of people remember that for what you could get there as far as musical instruments and audio, video accessories. TVs, stereos. Here's my friend Mary Beth sitting on Santa's lap during the 1960s, looking a little intimidated by Santa Claus at the time, but she did get a lollipop to kind of calm her down there, at least at first in this picture. This is at Pomeroy's. And these are my friends Kim and Cindy sitting on Santa's lap also, number 12343. Sitting on the Santa's lap in Pomeroy's Toyland, 6th floor. This is 1968, and this was one of the more popular Santas that played Santa over the years in the Reading Parade, and his name was Harold Runyon. The story is that Santa would actually be taken by, he would be lifted up into the Toyland window on Penn Street to go into, and that would be the official start of Santa Claus. But in this picture, you can clearly see that might have been a little difficult because it looks like the garland was actually on the bucket in the back that would have prevented him from going up. But I don't really know, but I do know that that story has been talked about and has been confirmed by many, that he was actually lifted up by the bucket off the fire truck, and he climbed in, a rather adventurous Santa Claus, I would say, because he climbed into the window from into the 6th floor of Pomeroy's to start, take a seat at Toyland. These are some of the pictures from Jonathan Shalter from 1972, when I did my program with Michelle Lynch a couple of weeks ago. I kind of drew a blank on his name, and we both did. So now I have my notes in front of me, so I'm okay with that because I shot everything from the hip with that program. But you're going to see a lot of different photographs. The story was Jonathan Shalter was a photographer. He invited some of his photographer friends to come down on a rainy night, Penn Square, 1972, to take some pictures. No one else wanted to go along with, so he took the photographs himself. And the series of photographs that we're going to see are from that photo shoot that he did. Here's the Whitner store, lit up for Christmas. Pomeroy's. When I opened this program last year at the Berks History Center, I had one of the candles from the store that was property of Michelle and Michelle Louder and Mike Louder from the Center Park Historic District. They had one of the candles and they allowed me to borrow it so I could actually put it in the window and relight it for display for that program, which I was very thankful for that. Here is the entrance to Pomeroy's, and there you can see that grate that blasted you with the warm air when you walked in the door. And there's a nice photograph of Penn Street. Looking west for a shoe store building and Whitner's. He thought it was a nice night to do it because it was like a light rain. So it kind of gave the street a nice glistening look. And this is the courthouse, as you can see. When the courthouse still displayed different lights at the top. There's Mary Beth looking a little bit more comfortable on Santa's lap. And Kim and Cindy were joined by their brother Bruce, all barely making it on Santa's lap there. Interesting how these photographs don't have the number at the bottom, but these do. This is what Penn Square looked like after the redevelopment was in place. They kind of ripped out all the 600 block and 700 block of Penn Streets. This whole concept with this pedestrian mall in the very beginning, this was supposed to be the entranceway to the Penn Mall. This was actually of that Penn Mall concept that was supposed to encompass the 600 and 700 blocks of Penn Street, is the only piece that actually ever did follow through and was put in. This was put in 1975, and it lasted up until the 1990s, until they reopened the square again. Here's Al Paris. He's out of retirement. This was from 1975. He came out of retirement to do one last hurrah. He was well known for his stint on Candid Camera as the dancing traffic cop. But this was in December 1975. He came out of retirement for one more shot at it. This is a 1980s ad for Joseph's. Like I said, if anyone has any kind of photographs that they have like from the 80s or even from the 90s, you know, that would, you know, Christmas themed, I would like to add some of that to this. So again, you know, email elise@berkshistory.org with, you know, what you have, and I'd be more than willing to try and incorporate it and round this program out a little nicer than I have, because I have a little gap in here, obviously, from in the 80s and the 90s with Christmas. This is from the 2000 Christmas on Penn Square. This is Santa Claus going down Penn Street. As we can see, he's in the 400 block in this photograph. This is when we still had we now have an artificial tree, but this is when we had a real tree that was still being put up. Kind of what it looked like back then. This was the tree lighting of the newer tree. This was a couple of years ago. I believe this is 2017, actually, when they had the tree lighting ceremony on Penn Square. And you can see a lot of people still come out for it, so that's nice. And the one thing that's nice is they transformed the Farmers Bank at 5th and Penn into where Santa Claus can greet the kids, and that tradition still goes on. This year it did not, unfortunately, but you know, hopefully once we get through this pandemic, we'll be able to do that once again. But the building is so beautiful inside. And last but not least, if I'm going to share some of my friends' pictures on Santa Claus's lap, at least you can get to see me on my lap with my brother and my mom, who I have lost both of them. I miss them dearly. You can see our Christmas tree. This is 1961 when I was just a little toddler. And you can see in our Christmas tree there's a lot of those ornaments that are on that tree, including the twinkling star of Bethlehem that is on that tree that still I use to this day in memory of those that I lost in my family. And with that, I say Merry Christmas and thank you. If there's any questions, I'm more than willing to answer them then. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. There are just a few questions here to get us started. Have one question here. Have any of the Santa Claus Lane signs been preserved anywhere? I don't know that I've seen any in our collection.
No, unfortunately they were not. One thing that's interesting about that, if you watched our BCTV program, Michelle had the opportunity of gaining access to the old comfort station, and they have the old light standards in that comfort station from the 1970s with the candle on it and with the garland that was kind of like in like an S shape. That's actually down there, and it's my goal to want to get some of that for the Berks History Center. They have the candles, they have some, and they have that garland also. So, and the Santa Clauses that were lit up that were on the square at that time also. So it's my goal to get some of that stuff. So I'm going to work on that.
Okay. Another couple questions here. What was the Bamford family the same one that ran the pharmacy on South 5th Street?
That I am not sure of. That I can't really say that I know that answer 100%.
Okay. And another question I have here is someone was asking where for a location on one of the photos. It was a photo that had the I think it was the Reading beer sign. It's a traditionally Dutch on it, if you can recall that picture.
Oh, yes, that was on top of what is today the, oh God, blank. 4th and Penn Streets, Marble Ranch. God, I had a blank there for a second.
That's all right. Thank you, Rick. Scanning down through here, I don't see any more questions at the moment, but Rick, a number of people just sharing that they really enjoyed the program and wishing you a Merry Christmas. You're like Reading's Ghost of Christmas Past here for us.
Well, it's funny. A couple of years ago when we were brainstorming about how programs that would be interesting to people that they would like to see, I came up with this idea. And so when I came up with the idea, I had to figure a way out to make it happen. So like I said, if anybody has anything that they have in their collection that they'd be willing to share to enhance this, to make it even better, I would love to incorporate that and make this even a better program.
Someone noticed a picture of the Salvation Army shacks that the women played Christmas records. Do you have any close-up pictures of those?
I do not, no.
No.
Unfortunately, I do not, no.
Well, maybe somebody in the audience does. They
Hopefully, that would be nice.
There you go.
Yeah, that would be part of what I'd be looking for. So yes.
We know there's some interest in something like that.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that takes us to the end of the Q&A that we have submitted here, Rick. Really appreciate your time this morning. I appreciate the audience being with us here. Once again, appreciate Herbine allowing us to use their webinar platform to host this program. We wish everybody, a happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and a Happy New Year, and good health and safety as we continue through this historic time. So,
yes. Merry Christmas, health and happiness to all.
Yes. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.